Hello. Yeah, that happens with a lot of people. The camera is never easy to focus on. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I am here to tell you more about what happened with your NMAT mock. A lot of things happened with your NMAT mock, right? You must have taken a lot of you, almost all of you must have given. Yeah, that happens with a. So my audio was on, which is weird. And I started hearing my voice somewhere around 15 seconds after I started speaking. Hota hai. Technology is like that. So where was I? I was telling you people that you must have taken an NMAT mock. And for most of you, this might just be the first ever adaptive test that you have given in your life. One. Second, bigger problem. Bigger problem is NMAT, NMIMS, not NMAT. NMIMS made an announcement this year. That announcement is that you can take the NMAT 3 times. Yes, but if you are applying to NMIMS for any of the courses, the MBA or the PGDM, in that case, NMIMS will only consider the first attempt score. It will not look at your retakes, which means if your target is NMIMS or any of its programs, you have to make sure that your first score is your best score, which also means at the end of the session, I will be taking questions from anyone and everyone on how do you schedule your NMAT. So because we have to reach that point, let's get started. So this happened last year. What did NMIMS tell people about what exactly happens with your NMAT? So they said that it is going to be, delivered one question at a time. You people have seen it, how it happens one question at a time. And this is also where I start talking about the other aspects related to adaptive. So what do people say? People say that if it's an adaptive test, from a test taker's perspective, what all things should be considered, what all things should not be considered. If it is an adaptive test, the better you perform on the test, the higher the difficulty level of the questions. If it is not an adaptive test, even if it's a linear test, obviously the level of difficulty is going to be somewhere around like it does not adapt to your performance. Now, that is different from what actually happens in an adaptive test, which is the reason we have a dedicated session, because otherwise you might have realized that when you are done with your NMAT mock, you don't really see that standard question answer thing. I mean, you will see an analysis, you might be able to see your questions, but you will not see that difficulty level, because that's what happens with all the adaptive tests. We don't really disclose the difficulty levels because it does not make sense. Why? That's what I'm here to talk about today. So they also started giving you scaled scores. They used to give scaled scores earlier also, but with an adaptive test, the problem with a scaled score is there has to be a base, which is usually not zero. In most adaptive tests in the world, you give the GMAT, they have a scaling of 6 to 51. You give a GRE, they have a scaling of 130 to 170. So the same happened with NMAT now. They have given a scaled score. So what does the scaled score do, or how is it calculated? I think I have it here somewhere in the slides. It's not a lot of slides. It's probably only after this slide, there are only 3-4 slides more. So we'll get into the discussion on the interaction mode really soon. But so the scoring pattern changes. Yes. How is the score going to be calculated? The score is going to be calculated primarily on the basis of the number of correct answers. So it is still very similar to what happens on a regular test, but the score will factor in the difficulty level of each question. Now this means in any standardized or adaptive test, the scoring pattern always is every question that you see has a difficulty level allocated to it. And that difficulty level is typically equal to the raw score of the question, which means on the NMAT, it is impossible that if you answer all the questions or some of the questions correctly, and even though questions were of a difficulty level, the score that you get for different questions of different difficulty level, that score is the same. That's not how it works. That's why we have a scaling. And that's what CAT also tries to do. They've been doing it since so long now that they follow the scaling and the normalization method. So back to NMAT. NMAT has some questions all the questions which have different difficulty levels. So we have this understanding based on the last year's performance, and last year we had fantastic performances on the NMAT, that your NMAT should have across each section, which has 36 questions each, 36 in language skills, 36 in quantitative skills, and 36 in logical reasoning. In each of those, NMAT is expected to have 4 difficulty levels. Difficulty level 1, which should be like the easiest question type, a difficulty level 2, which will be somewhere around easy to moderate type, a difficulty level 3, which should be moderate to difficult, and difficulty level 4, which should be like really, really difficult. So when you reach difficulty level 4, what are you looking at? All of you are my Endeavor kids. You've solved the modules. A difficulty level 1 in our Endeavor books would be the kind of questions that you see in class exercise in quant. Okay. Difficulty level 2 would be something that you see in the practice tests or the home exercise, home assignment 1. Difficulty level 3. Now, many of you have not seen that book yet. So difficulty level 3 should be the easier. If you give unit tests of quant, difficulty level 3 would be the easier questions on unit tests, because I'm sure you must have given unit tests and you found them really difficult, which is why difficulty level 4 are the toughest questions that you see in the unit tests. 1, people might have given mocks, the EOMs that we have, Endeavor online mocks, and they're not the most difficult one. So difficulty level 4 on NMAT will never be equal to the most difficult or the highest difficulty level on CAT. No, that's never going to happen. But that will still be a moderate difficulty level. So what really changes here? See, what changes here, what makes these questions really worth highest possible difficulty level is the time. On CAT, a particular question might not appear so difficult to you because you can give it 3 or 4 minutes. On the NMAT, when you know that you have 36 questions to be answered in 52 minutes, the moment a question takes beyond 2.5, 3 minutes, you will start getting nervous. And nervousness is the only thing that you need to start answering questions incorrectly, even if you probably know what the answer is, or you can calculate what the answer is. So that's why that difficulty level gets relatively adjusted only because of the time. Anyways, back to the thing. So scoring has changed. What else is performance on the questions? Fine. Now, what does this not mean? The major thing that you will probably hear from, I don't know how many people, this is what we said last year also. First rule, the first few questions are very important. When did NMAT become adaptive? After NMIMS was taken over by GMAC, the people who conduct GMAT. So when NMIMS became adaptive, NMAT, became adaptive, it had to follow the same structure as GMAT. So when I say that it is not necessary that, when I say that it is not necessary that the first few questions are important, that is because I am quoting something from the official guide to the GMAT review. So it is the official book published by the GMAC, and they say the same thing about NMAT. They say the same thing about GMAT, that the entire idea that if you perform well on the first few questions, then your score will go higher. That entire concept is wrong. Rather, what happens is, so this is what people have shown. This picture is apparently something that I've taken from the internet from someone who was trying to explain what the adaptive structure is, and this is undoubtedly clearly bullshit. That's not how the adaptive structure works. So the next time you see a picture like this, or you see someone who's given an explanation like this, that's not how it works. Because that would mean what? That would mean, look at it from a common sense perspective. You started with a quant section, the quantitative reasoning section, correct? Quantitative skills. Your first question is apparently an algebra question, which you were able to solve in, let's say, 1 minute, 1 minute. So if you were able to solve it in 1 minute and you think that your answer is correct, I would rate that question at somewhere around difficulty level 2. Now, because you answered an algebra question of difficulty level 2 correctly, if the next question that is thrown at you is a DI question of level 4, that does not make sense. People will tell you about, I have met people in my industry who talk about item response theory and all that bullshit, and that does not work here, because giving your difficulty level 4 question is doing what? What is it testing you on? You might go from a difficult, if you're good with, I mean, if you look at it from a logical perspective, common sense says, if you're good with algebra level 2, I should next test you on algebra level 3, not on data interpretation level 4 or geometry level 3. That does not tell me or give me a fair assessment, because we know that there are only 36 questions and those 36 questions have to cover a wide range of concepts. So I can't just randomly pick up questions that belong to a particular field and make them more difficult. And then there are questions which belong to a particular concept and they are easier. No, that's not how it works. That is why if you ever feel like the first few questions are very important, no, that is not how it works. Picture courtesy. How does this work? This is what we expect things should be. Your first 9 questions, and this is also where I want to take a pause and elaborate the entire concept of difficulty. Why should you, as a test taker who's targeting a score about 240 or 250 or 270 on the NMAT, why should you not worry about difficulty levels? One, because the universal truth is difficulty levels are always subjective. If you and your friend sit down to take a test, you might not agree on all the questions in terms of difficulty level. In other words, what you might find easy, your friend might find difficult, and vice versa. So when you see a question and you find it difficult, that is your perception. The software does not use your perception to allocate that raw score or that difficulty level to a question. So if I look at the larger thing, a question is apparently termed a higher difficulty level when that question is administered to a few thousand test takers or a few hundred test takers, and most of them end up answering the question incorrectly. So then, and because it's an automated system, the software understands that if a particular question, after being administered to 800 students, only 10% of the people got it correct, that means that question is difficult. If 90% of people get it wrong. So that is not under human control. That is what the software decides, which is why those 10%, you might be in those 10% people, you might be in that 1% who not only got the answer correct, but you actually aced that question in just 20 seconds. So a lot of things can happen, which is why difficulty level assessment really does not help your case, especially if you're using it in a negative manner, where you start thinking about, oh, this is so difficult, which means my score is going up. Oh shit, this question is so easy. Ab kya hoga? What do I do next? What did I do wrong in the previous question? Why did I get an easy question? Those things, those thoughts you cannot afford in a test where you are more or less constantly running throughout the test. So we expect that your initial questions should be probably in the moderate to difficult level. It's a level 3. And if you answer more than 6 questions, these are sample numbers. Depending on the performance of the test takers of the previous years, if you answer more than 6 questions correctly, the software understands that you have answered 7 or 8 or 9 questions correctly out of 9, sorry. That means you are really good with difficulty level 3. You deserve to go to a difficulty level 4. But if that is not how strong your performance is, maybe you just get only around 4 to 5 questions correct. The software understands that you're not bad. You could have been someone with 3 or less than 3 correct also. Software understands that you're not bad with it. So what are we doing here? You are good. You're not really, really good. So let's give you some more questions. So the software will throw some more questions at you of the same difficulty level till you meet the threshold of the software to decide whether you deserve to go up to a level 4 or you deserve to go down to a level 2. And it will continue to work on those because the questions are tagged. So the software knows that you have performed well in this section. You answered 5 questions correctly out of 9, but out of those 4 that you answered incorrectly, 3 were algebra questions. So the software, to identify whether you are good or bad with algebra, it will give you more of algebra questions. If you continue to perform badly in algebra questions, the software understands that you are bad with algebra. The best part about an adaptive software always is it tries to maximize your score. So once the software has reached a threshold to decide that, okay, this person is just bad with algebra, it will stop giving you algebra questions, which leads to people coming out of an NMAT and telling their friends or whoever is there, I had a lot of algebra questions in the beginning, but then I don't remember seeing any algebra questions at the end. That would be because you were not so good with algebra. Does the software decide that you are really, really good with something? No. The software does not have a higher benchmark. It will not stop giving questions to you of a particular type only because you have aced each of those questions. No, it has to continue with that thing. So maximizing your score, if the software aims at maximizing your score, it cannot stop dishing out questions which are in your strength area. It can stop dishing out questions which are in your weakness area. So you start, this is how we expect things to work. Now, if NMAT can go to difficulty level 5, which is what we thought earlier, and because like I said, see, my calculation is up to difficulty level 4, but then when we created this, because we know that GMAT goes to difficulty level 5, so we used the same framework here. So I could go from difficulty level 4 to difficulty level 5 also. If not, the software continues to follow the same approach. Now, if I use this entire framework where each section of 9 questions, I should get at least 6 correct to move to the higher difficulty level, which is going to obviously boost my score. And yes, it is very, very logical that once you reach a very high difficulty level, you are among those elite candidates who are able to solve those questions. So maybe if you are unable to get 6 or 7 correct out of 9 at a difficulty level 5, there's nothing to feel ashamed about. Even if you perform badly after reaching difficulty level 5, the worst thing that can happen is the next set of questions will be from difficulty level 4. Hence my point that because we cannot judge the difficulty levels, what do we do? As an NMAT taker, your task is very simply cut out. What will it look like? It's going to look like this. Okay, at each level, I have multiple possibilities. So I was saying as an NMAT test taker, what is my task cut out? My tasks are, first thing, be a manager. Between now and the next NMAT, what are we doing? We are giving you 7 mock adaptive NMATs and we are giving you 5 take homes, out of which you guys have already taken 1. So there are 6 more to go. And I have said that we are going to discuss either now or later your queries about when to schedule your NMAT. So that also becomes an important thing that we need to figure out how do you plan your test, because we are going to, after a certain point, somewhere around the date that we have decided is somewhere around 30th of September or maybe 20th of September, we are going to give you access to all the tests. For EUMs, Endeavor Open Mocks, online mocks, Endeavor online mocks, the dates will remain fixed. But for the NMATs, we will give you access so that you guys can practice as many tests as you want, which also means if you are among a category of students who wants to give their NMAT around 20th of October or 22nd of October, I honestly would not recommend that. Why? I'll come on the next page. That is where our discussion is. But if you still want to get done with NMAT by 22nd or 23rd of October, in that case, 23rd of October is Emilia Clarke's birthday, by the way. I get distracted by Emilia Clarke all the time. So beta, if you want to give it by 22nd or 23rd of October, then yes, you have only 20 days and you have, after giving today's mock, you only have another 11 mocks to give. So you're going to have a very hectic October. Anyways, I'm not saying that 22nd or 23rd is a bad date. I'm just saying that there are reasons that might justify giving the NMAT slightly later, even if NMIMS is your top priority. You're like, sir, I don't have good grades. I don't think I will ever be invited by the top 15 IIMs or related colleges which look at pointers. I mean, my pointers are very, very average. So IIMs so is never not going to happen. Maybe a NITI is also not going to happen. So I want to target NMAT, NMIMS, full-time MBA. So for such a person, we will have to look at, see, just because NMIMS is a priority, I don't think you should take the NMAT before everything else. Rather, I'm going to look at 2 more important variables. Let me come to those variables. मैं बार-बार भूल जाता हूँ यार बीच में. Be a manager. What is being manager? Between now and your next NMAT adaptive, which is where I got distracted. In fact, this applies to your CATs also. I'll meet many of you in next 4 or 5 days. Then I have a session called How to Analyze Your CAT. Mock CAT. Sorry. So it's going to be the same advice. Be a manager. A manager is what? A manager knows his strengths and weaknesses. You sit for the NMAT. You know that it is an adaptive test. You see 1 question at a time. And it's just a random order. So difficulty level, not in your hands. Type of question, not in your hands. What is in your hands? You see a question and you know that this question belongs to your strength area, one, or you know that this question belongs to your weakness area. But you also know that there is no negative marking. And you know that if you answer this question, only then do you go to the next question. If you do not answer this question, you remain stuck here. One, once you go to the next question, you cannot come back and change the answer to this question. Now, when you combine all of these, what does it tell you? It tells you, you see a question, you know that that question is from a strength area, a concept that you're really good at. What do? In such a case, you give it whatever the best time you can, answer it confidently, and move to the next question. The reverse case happens. You've seen a question and the question is like, oh shit, इसको सबसे पहले आना था मनहूस. कोई बात नहीं. Sir, I want to try it. That is what a manager will not do. You have solved so much since the day you started your CAT preparation and your NMAT. I'm taking it a futuristic scenario. Maybe till now you haven't solved a lot, but then between now and your actual NMAT, there are at least 2 months. So in those 2 months, you would have solved enough to know what are your weaknesses and what are your strengths. If you go into any exam, be it NMAT, be it CAT, be it IFT, be it ZAT, be it any other exam, if you go into an exam thinking, oh, I'm going to try, that try wala thing does not work. Let's not go there. So as a manager, you want to not waste time on questions which come from those weakness areas, because by giving them time, you are stupidly depriving the other questions from your strength areas, which if you give sufficient time, you can answer them correctly. Because you waste time on these questions, the ones that you anyways are not very confident about, you end up with less time for the other questions. So if you want a number, I'll give you a number. 36 questions, 52 minutes is what quant does. What is an expected performance? If you get maybe around 26 or 27 correct out of 36, you should be very, very close to the top 4 or 5 score ranges on the NMAT, which means if NMAT gives out a highest possible scale score of, let's say, 113, at 26 correct out of 36, you should be very, very close to somewhere around 108 or 109, which should be an amazing score, trust me. And it's not difficult to get 26 correct out of 52, out of 36, but people don't get there. And when I say 26 correct out of 36, I am also assuming that you will not have, all of your out of 26 questions, or the last 18 questions are correct and the first 18 everything is going wrong. No, that if that has happened, then it's a mess. Then it's a complete mess, because if you get only 4 correct in the first 18 and the last 18 questions you get all of them correct, so the software already knows that you don't deserve a higher difficulty level. So then it has intentionally given you all the lower difficulty level questions. But ये पता ही नहीं चलेगा आपको. You will never know how many you answered correctly. So that's why stop worrying about difficulty level and stop worrying about whether I am incorrect. I have always said, so many years of teaching, I keep telling people, when people say, sir, kitne questions correct karne chahiye, my counter question is, you really think that you are going to go in and answer questions incorrectly or on an exam like CAT? That question itself does not make sense. Kitne questions correct karne chahiye? You go in, you look at a question, you answer it. The maximum that you can answer correctly, that is your target. You can't go in with a number, because if you go in with a number, how does that help? Are you telling me the other questions you will intentionally mark incorrectly or mark randomly? No, that number that you should get at least 10 correct or 15 correct or 18 correct, that number might just give you motivation to try those questions which you are bad with. Ideally, you should not do that, because the more you do that, the more you'll end up confusing your entire analysis of what are you good with and what you are not so good with. Stop worrying about the adaptive format. I've said that already. Focus on your strengths and weaknesses. You might not be able to control the factors that make you commit silly mistakes. Most of us don't even realize that we're making a silly mistake. It's always retrospective wisdom. So silly mistakes might happen, might not happen. I don't care. What I care about is you've done your calculation, you've answered the question, you look at the timer and you realize that, okay, I'm running out of time. My advice to you still is, if you're giving an adaptive test, please remember, it is absolutely okay to end up in a situation where you have 5 questions left and only 1 minute. which automatically means, because NMAT is an exam with no negative marking, but because it's an adaptive test, if you fail to finish the section, all the questions in that section in the allocated time, the algorithm does not get 36 responses to calculate your scaled score. It's going to include a penalty. That's definitely going to happen. So you have to finish. I was saying, if you end up in a situation where you have 5 questions and just 1 minute, answer all of them randomly before you run out of time. Any counter question on, but then what if I get them wrong? In a bid, in that pursuit of not getting wrong, if you end up with unattempted questions, that is the worst thing that you can do to your NMAT. If the time runs out and you are unable to attempt all the questions, trust me, there is nothing that you can do worse on your actual test. You have to finish everything. But even if that happens, even if you have to answer 5 or 6 or 7 questions in the last 1 minute, that is okay. That won't hurt your score so much as making a lot of mistakes in the initial phase when the software is trying to understand what your level really is. So don't rush through the initial questions out of the panic, out of the fear that you might run out of time. If that happens, that you are very close to running out of time, just mark answers randomly. You won't suffer badly. If you don't know how to solve it, do not waste time on it. Finish the test within the given duration. And between now and your next NMAT or everything else, the approach remains the same. Practice and test and analyze and repeat. So what next? Should you practice more adaptive tests? Dude, I'm already giving you one. I'm giving you truly adaptive tests. Nobody in the market can offer that. Second, I'm giving you more adaptive tests than anybody else can. People have, like I said, people have those semi-adaptive tests. I can challenge anyone in the market to show me the algorithm that helps them to get an adaptive test. औकात नहीं है किसी की. So let's not even worry about that. And these adaptive tests are good. They will continue to show you scores which will be very similar to what might happen on the actual NMAT. So there's only one condition. That condition is I will end up taking the test on XYZ date, and if I perform on that day the same way that I performed today, then my scores will be similar. But if my performance on that day is different, then I cannot say, sir, NMAT Endeavor के NMAT marks में तो मेरा 200 आ रहा था, but actual NMAT 250 आया, तो अच्छा है ना? If you get 250 on the actual NMAT, one, you clear the cutoff for NMIMS, two, you have performed better than what you might have done in the mocks over here. So that there is no comparison there. Practice more difficult level questions. Always finish the Endeavor material no matter what happens. As much as possible, finish the tests. Practice as many, because easy questions after a certain point will only and only make you complacent. So once you're done with the books, unless you have major areas of concern, stop looking at the books, start solving the online tests. Should you schedule your NMAT? How will the scaling work? I've already said. The maximum that you can do in terms of answering questions confidently, the better your score will be. The more you start getting confused within the test about, okay, so I'm not really sure about this answer, let me mark it, or maybe I should try this question one more time. The more you waste your time, the more you are, a hardworking person who is not a manager, the less the outcome will be in terms of what you expected. So that brings us to, should you schedule your NMAT attempt early or late? Now, because I am on YouTube, I think I can go to YouTube and I can start taking questions on should you attempt your NMAT early or late, because I had my audio on, which I cannot use now. I cannot use it now because it starts talking to me straight away. So does anyone have any questions that you want to put into chat? Chat क्या किया इन्होंने? Disable कर दिया? Oh, disable कर दिया. Where is my dear Ajay? Ajay, can we enable the chat? Can we let kids ask questions about NMAT? Can I stop sharing? Oh, I can totally stop sharing, but मेरी शक्ल बड़ी हो जाएगी इसमें. Do I have an Ajay here? Can I enable it? No, I can't enable it. I'm just the speaker. Mhm. चलो ठीक है. So then, in that case, because chat is disabled, you people will be able to reach out to me sooner or later. We'll discuss your queries on chat or Telegram or mail or whatever it is. Enjoy your time. Give your enjoy your preparation. I'll see you kids again in some days with the how to simulate and analyze your mock cat. Till then, stay safe and see you everyone. Good night.